So good morning, everyone, and it's really nice to see everybody. Today, my talk is called "Flying Lessons: How to Soar," and I'll start the PowerPoint in a minute. But I just want to reiterate why I'm doing this nature series. Everything that's been going on, as I mentioned before we started the service, with climate change has made me even more grateful for what I see in nature. The birds, the trees, the water, everything. And it is in this spirit to truly appreciate and learn from all of the animals and all of creation, because this talk, as this whole series has been embedded in the principle one, which you just read so beautifully, which is that God is everywhere present and that God is present in all creatures. And sometimes we talk about in unity that God is present in humanity, but I really would like to expand that to include all of creation, because we cannot be separate from God. God is everywhere present and in all things. And to appreciate it and to look at it and to be aware of what is around us. And also to learn from all of the other creatures. I'm reading this book called Breeding Sweetgrass, and it's by a Native American woman. And one of the things she talks about is how in Native American culture, they look at humans as the younger siblings of the earth, and all of the other creatures are here to teach us. And another interesting fact that I picked up the other day was I was reading a Jewish website, and they were talking about the origin of the word dominion in the Bible, which quite frankly, I think has caused a lot of problems. That we are here to dominate and control and to basically just rape and pillage the earth. And that's not what this one rabbi thinks that it meant at all. That whoever translated it or wrote it down in Hebrew put a dot over this one particular word so that the root was to subdue, when actually, if they had not put the dot, which he feels was the correct interpretation, it would have meant to lower oneself, to be humble before. And to me, that is the real truth of this particular sermon, to be humble in front of the animals, because they really do know so much more in many ways than we do. And we judge them based on our criteria. But again, birds in particular have been around for over 60 million years. So I think they do know a thing or two. So I'm going to start the slideshow and share my screen. I don't know why it's paused, and I'm not sure why that is. So I'll just start it again. Well, it's always worked before, so I am not sure what's going on. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So the first part of this is Flying Lessons: How to Soar. And I'm going to start out with a poem by one of my favorite poets, Joyce Rupp. And I'll be reading a few poems of hers throughout this presentation, of my talk today. There is a part of me that belongs in the wide open spaces. There's a part of me that flies in the vast heavens. There's a part of me that nests in the woods and sings in the trees. This part of me can never be contained under a wooden roof. And that is pretty much what we're going to talk about today, how these amazing creatures called birds have just completely inspired us from the beginning of time. You know, those old-timey movies where people have these ridiculous wings on their arms and they're trying to fly, and usually with bad results, and how we've wanted to be able to be like the birds. We've wanted to soar and to fly. But there's other ways of soaring and flying, and it can also be an inward journey to continue to fly up, and expand in consciousness. From Genesis 1:22. So God created the sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So even in the Bible, which makes me realize when I think about all the Bible verses about animals, that animals are valued and were valued, and maybe there was a mistranslation. But one of the things I know is during the course of my life as a minister, just regular human being, a grief counselor, so many people have told me that birds have come to them and they've thought of it as their loved one who had departed, and that they were bringing a message that they're okay or that their presence is still with them. And people have really felt a lot of comfort from that. And there's so many other times when people see a feather and think that it is a message from an angel, or a bird comes to them and they think it's a message from the divine. And you know what? It probably is. And some people believe that, maybe we get to soar like birds and angels after we die. And it doesn't matter because these are amazing creatures, and their symbolism has been throughout the ages. Ancient Egypt, the Celts, the Vikings, so many civilizations. In fact, it's hard to think of one that didn't have a bird as a sacred symbol. So I'm hoping we can tap into their wisdom. What is so amazing about birds is that they are the only creatures that belong to earth and sky. They can be on the ground and hunt for insects and find food. They make their nests in trees, but they can also fly. They can fly above the earth. And what an amazing symbol that is for us, that we can be grounded in earth, but spiritually we can soar. We can fly above our problems and our concerns and take it to a higher level. That upper consciousness, or that, I hate to say higher, but more aware consciousness that something greater is guiding our lives. And they also are amazing creatures. I mean, they have these delightful songs. They inspire us with their ability to fly. And they have a common bond with angels in that they both have wings. And they've been symbols of freedom for many cultures, including ours. And because we, as I've mentioned, wanted to soar physically and spiritually. So we look to them for their wisdom and appreciate how different they are from us. But as we're going to find out today, in many ways, how similar they are. So we honor them and we bless them and we give gratitude for them. And we humbly ask to learn from them. So we take a leap of faith, trusting that our internal wings will support us and lift us up. In this poem from Joyce Ruff, quiet as the slipping of the red orb into sunset, unobtrusive as the first star shining in the evening sky, so the young ducks slide across the silent pond. I do not see their yellow-webbed oars swiftly beneath their bodies, carrying them contentedly upon the green water. Two young ducks reach the other shore, beckoning my web-footedness to do its part as well. What is it in me that believes I can move across the waters of life without using my spiritual oars? What passive stranger continues to urge my spirit toward a lack of intention? This is what is amazing about birds, whether they're in nests in the trees or in water. At some point, they have to leave the nest. They have to leave their comfort zone, whether they do it of their own volition or whether they are actually kicked out. They have to learn how to fly and how to swim. And a lot of times we want to stay in our comfort zone. But when we don't take that risk of doing something different or being fully who we are, we never really get to know what we're made of or who we are. And the animals teach us, the birds teach us to take that leap of faith, trusting that our internal wings will support us and lift us up. And so we know that we call upon the power of faith to know that we have everything we need to live the life we were meant to live. And I love this picture. Some of these, I think I picked the birds just because I love the pictures, but I love this. Be curious and flexible. Most owls are mostly solitary, and they are definitely nocturnal birds of prey with binocular vision, binaural hearing, and feathers for silent flight. And owls do not need eyes in the back of their head to see what's behind them because they just swivel. Some owls actually have the ability to swivel their heads 207 degrees. So if they want to look to the left, they just swivel, and vice versa. So that's pretty amazing to be able to swivel your head 270 degrees. And we can't see in all directions like owls, but with our spiritual vision, we can see beyond the circumstances of our lives. We can see and hear God's presence if we only listen. And we let go of what we think we see and hear and allow divine guidance. Because sometimes our vision is clouded, and the owls can't see if there's fog, and neither can we. So we ask for our spiritual vision to be restored. And I love this part as owls fly silently to get their food. There's some wonderful documentaries on owls, and even when they flap their wings, you cannot hear a sound. And I think we've all found in some way that it's in the silence that we find our spiritual food as well. Geese. My father loved geese. He was from Canada. It's a national bird. And every year we would go and try to find the geese at, I think it was called, I can't remember now, Huracan in Wisconsin. And we would drive there, and a lot of times the geese had not yet migrated. So we actually found more geese at home than we did when we were traveling around trying to find them. But I have a special place in my heart for geese, not only because of my father, but a few months ago, Howie and I had watched this animated short film, and it was from the perspective and narrated by a goose. And the goose talked about how he met his mate and how he loved her and how they had children together and all about their lives and their friends. And it was really beautiful. And then he talked about how they were starting to migrate, and disaster happened. The whole entire flock, except for him, was killed because they had collided actually with the engine of a plane. And Flight 1549 landed in the Hudson River, commanded by Captain Sullenberg. And the headlines read that there were no deaths. But the goose explained that there were. There was his beloved mate who he had been with for years. There were his children and his children's children, and all of the other friends and family that were a part of that flock. And I thought about when I saw that newscast, and did I consider at the time that the lives of the geese were also valuable? And that's what we're really here today, to just realize other beings have worth and value, and to mourn their loss as we mourn our own. And so here are some amazing facts about geese. For one, they mate for life. And here's another fact I didn't know. 90% of all the birds in the world are monogamous, either meaning with one partner at a time or for life. And geese, it is for life. And their lifespan is between 10 and 20 years. And they raise and protect their young together and also protect each other throughout their lives. And just at least a hopeful note that if a goose does die, sometimes they do find another goose to be with. And that they mourn, that they are emotional, that when it says when a Canada goose loses its mate or eggs, they have been observed to mourn. They may remove themselves from the flock, and they stay by themselves, and you can hear them on the lake just crying and mourning the loss of their loved ones. And they're loyal, they're devoted, and they look out for each other. I've read in countless stories about how a goose who's lost its mate, or the mate is dying or sick, they will stay with them. Even though the flock is left, they will stay with their mate until they either get better or they die. And that's devotion and loyalty. They also share power when they're flying in that V formation. It's very, very strenuous. So they take turns leading so that no one gets too tired. Another one that I thought was really amazing is they have at least 13 different calls, ranging from warnings, greetings, contentment calls, and honks, indicating gathering times. Adults begin communicating with their young when they're still in the egg. When they migrate, they honk encouragement to each other and indicate directions. I don't know about you, but that's far more complicated than I knew about, and how amazing these creatures are, and how they are not so unlike us. The next one, I think I chose flamingos primarily because I love this picture and I just love them. I mean, they truly are in a category of their own. One of the things that I found really interesting, and I read this, is that there is some evidence that indicates flamingos evolved 30 million years ago, and they have some really good fossils from 7 million years ago in the Andes Mountains of all places. It's believed that they are most closely related to shorebirds, though some researchers have also found that they are also distant relatives of the heron and ibis. It's also known through DNA that they're related to some forms of ducks and geese. So the researchers and scientists did not know where to place them. So they gave them a category of their own. And they deserve it because they definitely are, as we were talking about earlier, flamboyant, and they are definitely who they are. And I love that, they don't think about being different. They don't think about whether or not they are a part of or look like other bird species. They're very proud of who they are, and they continually march up and down the beach. And I love that about them. And they're very community-minded, extremely community-minded. In fact, they raise all the babies together, not just one parental couple, but they raise them all together. They know about community. And I think what's interesting too is that we too know the value of community. And even though the flamingos sometimes stay within their own flock, which can number from 50 to 1,000,000 in some places, but we spread our wings outward to include all of the ancestors. When we think of all the different birds that these flamingos are related to, and through the miracle of DNA testing that we have now, we find all the people and ancestors that we didn't even know we had from other ethnic groups that we may not have been aware of. But to keep expanding our community, to keep expanding what we consider our flock. And the flamingos are amazing, amazing birds, and also have been very revered. The Egyptians had, because of their qualities, they were a representation of the god Ra, and they share responsibility, and they are amazing. Because the one thing we know is that we are more alike than we are different. And this bird is so beautiful, and I just thought, wow, look at all the colors. We've got yellows and oranges and pinks and blues and some little bits of purple. It has adapted in a way that is so creative and so beautiful and so imaginative. It is a joy to behold. And I thought about how all of us really are so beautiful in our own way. And to just be able to stand where we are and shine and to fly and to be proud of who we are. And this poem from Joyce Rupp, Spiritual wings fly uncluttered, letting go of the safe base, trusting open space, believing in another place to land, one that will hold me in nurturing embrace, inner freedom. My wings grow stronger with every flight. And we go stronger every time we spread our wings, every time we allow ourselves to think of something in a different way, or to see someone or ourselves in a different way, and to expand our love to include everything and everyone we see, whether or not we understand it or even like it, but to know that God is present and expressing through everything. The song. One of the joys of birds is their song. They sing of joy, they sing of sorrow, but they sing. Birds sing to communicate, they sing to attract a mate, they sing to ward off other birds from their territory, and they sing for the joy of it. And we delight in their songs and their calls. Some of their calls are pretty, some of them are not as melodious, but birds just don't care about that. They just sing. The crow doesn't have exactly a pretty melody, but they just talk all the time. And another bird I didn't include in this, but were the quails. The quails, every morning we hear them with their Chicago, Chicago. I mean, it's just wonderful. And they all come into our yard and they fly up on the little tub, and that all 8 of them sit around the tub of water and drink, and they call and they sing their song. And so in reading about singing can release endorphins and make us feel good. It helps boost our immune system. And the birds sing for many reasons, and one of them is because of the joy of singing, and that is for us as well. My aunt, who is not a good singer, in fact, she really could not carry a tune, but I loved to hear her sing because it came from her heart. So it's not about being perfect or being ready to be a recording artist to sing. Sing because your heart needs it. It needs to express that joy. And the joy we feel from singing. And this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh: "You only need to walk in mindfulness, making peaceful, happy steps on our planet. Breathe deeply and enjoy your breathing. Be aware that the sky is blue and the birds' songs are beautiful. Enjoy being alive, and you will help the living Christ and the living Buddha continue for a long, long time." So we just take a moment. And are we singing our songs? Are we being who we are meant to be? Are we finding joy? And if not, can we start today? Even if it's singing while doing dishes or singing while taking a shower, whatever it might be, but to sing our song and to be joyful. Wings and feathers. Feathers are very sacred, and we know this from Native American traditions. And also, as I mentioned before, that sometimes when we see a feather, we think maybe it is an angel's presence, but feathers are amazing. This is something to look at on your own, but how feathers are constructed. And there's 7 different kinds of feathers on birds: the tail feathers, the wing feathers, the head feathers, the breast feathers. I mean, it's amazing. It is truly amazing. And how we use feathers as a metaphor for, or similes for a lot of different things. Like we take someone under our wing, we're protecting them and nurturing them. And mother birds use their wings to cover and protect their young and to keep them warm. Wings and feathers can be used to soar, to rise above this earthly plane. And wings symbolize angels and the Holy Spirit and an elevated consciousness. Hummingbirds. They are so amazing. And I'd like to read this excerpt from Practicing the Art of Wonder Through Radical Presence, Lessons from the Hummingbird by K. Lauren DeBoer. And it was written in the Cosmos Journal in July, actually just a couple weeks ago. A broad-billed hummingbird hangs for a few seconds, not 3 feet away. The brilliant sapphire courgette flashes for an instant, and then the tiny bird is gone in a shot, his raspy cry fading like a lost thought into the oaks. I close my eyes and try to feel the impact the hundreds of hummingbirds I've seen over the past few years have had on my psyche. The swirl of their presence, their diminutive size, their radiant color, their adroit quickness, their bickering flurries all seep into me and finally well up into awed appreciation. Just for being in the world. Past, future, and self fall away, and in that moment, I've become the planet as human, in wonder at hummingbirds, feeling them as part of the splendor of life. Just for a moment, bring to mind a memory of a hummingbird. Maybe you feed hummingbirds and they come around, but they are truly amazing. Their little teeny weeny feet and how the babies are just minuscule. But just what an amazing, amazing and joyous sight it is to see a hummingbird. We just bring that to mind and give gratitude for it. Doves, the Holy Spirit and messengers. Charles Fillmore wrote in The Revealing Word, the dove symbolizes peace of mind and confidence in divine law. The dove is non-resistant. In this state of consciousness, we rest in spirit. A dove brought the message of God's forgiveness after the flood. And in Matthew 3:16, and when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. I always thought it was amazing that in the story of Noah, that it was a dove that was chosen, the symbol of peace and the forgiveness of God. And from Genesis 8:10, he waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and set forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. Then God said to Noah, go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons and your wife's sons, and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you, all of flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Again, another symbol of God's love for all creatures. Doves have often symbolized the Holy Spirit, and our Unity logo used to be the sign of the dove because they symbolize purity and being a messenger of God, as we saw in Matthew 3:16. And they're beautiful, and they're gentle, and they remind us somehow in our spirit of God's love. And related to them are the mourning doves, and they too are amazingly beautiful and sweet creatures. Many of them mate for life. As I mentioned, 90% of most birds are monogamous. They're nurturing, they're sensitive, and both parents care for the young. Both parents are capable, and they are the only birds that are capable of this, of creating something called crop milk, and both the male and female can do this. So they can feed their fledglings after they hatch. The doves fast for a few days to ensure that their milk is pure. and that what they are giving their young is the most nutritious possible. They have a soft cooing sound, and they also mourn the death of their mate, just like geese. And even though that is not why they get their name, it's because of the sound they make, that cooing sound. But they are such gentle and sensitive and loving birds. They represent for some a higher love, compassion, and purity. They're a symbol of promise. And another interesting fact is dove also can be pronounced dove. So when we dive into our consciousness, when we go within, when we dive into something, to take a risk, to take a chance, to be passionate about something, it is also a signal, a symbol that God's love is present because we are being divinely directed. And I love that doves raise their children together. They feed them together. They sit on the nest together. And to me, that really does represent a higher love and compassion. And so we truly, truly appreciate the doves and honor them for who they are. So the next time you see a pair of mourning doves, or any bird, just bless them and give thanks for who they are and what they bring to this earth. And the flying, that V formation, to me, it represents that we can use our internal guidance to rise above earthly concerns and to look at things from a new perspective. The birds migrate, some of them thousands. Like the one little bird that was on the picture for song, that particular warbler flies from Alaska to the Amazon to migrate, to breed. When I see the movie Winged Migration, and that was about geese, but how birds have this internal guidance system that directs them to the same place every year. Even though the landmarks change, they still know where they are going. And to me, that is so clear that the guidance we have is our internal GPS. And all we have to do is become silent and pray and meditate. And our internal GPS is right there for us, just like it is for the birds. And we can look at things from a new perspective. We can have a bird's eye view of what is going on in our lives. We can leave those earthly concerns. And so what I'd like to do right now is invite you to close your eyes. And just for a moment before we do our last two slides, to go into a meditation, to take 3 deep breaths. And allow yourself to become still. To bring to mind one of the birds we've seen so far. And what lessons, what inspiration have they brought to you? Or maybe it is something that you need to see from a different perspective, that you need to fly higher to be able to have that understanding, to be able to look at it in a different way, and to know that you are being divinely guided if you choose to be, and to allow that guidance from God to help you through whatever it is that you need guidance for. That you have everything you need, just like the birds. You have everything you need to soar. So in the silence, we ponder these things for just a few moments. And as we bring our attention back, we express gratitude for the birds of the air and of the ground, for all they have to teach us. And now for St. Francis, he had so much love for animals with a special fondness for the birds. He referred to animals as his brothers and sisters, and it was not uncommon for him to have a bird sitting on his shoulder because they loved him as well. The monks who recorded Francis's sermon to the birds, which I will be reading in a minute, wrote that the birds listened intently to everything he had to say. And they said this: while Francis said these words, all those birds began to open their beaks and stretch out their necks and spread their wings and bend their heads reverently toward the earth. With acts and songs, they showed that the Holy Father, Francis, gave them great pleasure. And so here is the sermon that St. Francis gave to the birds, because St. Francis didn't believe he should just preach to humans. He preached to all the animals because he too believed that God was everywhere present. And here it is. My sweet little sisters, birds of the sky, Francis said, you are bound to heaven, to God, your creator. In every beat of your wings, every note of your songs, praise him. He has given you the greatest gifts, the freedom of the air. You neither sow nor reap, yet God provides for you the most delicious food, rivers and lakes to quench your thirst, mountains and valleys for your homes, tall trees to build your nests, and the most beautiful clothing, a change of feathers with every season. You and your kind were preserved in Noah's ark. Clearly, our Creator loves you dearly, since he gives you gifts so abundantly. So please be aware, my little sisters, of the sin of ingratitude and always sing praise to God. And so we do know that all creation is loved. All creation is valued. And birds do kind of reap and sow. They do pollinate. They do lots of services for all of us. They carry seeds from trees and flowers. And we are grateful to them for all that they do and all that they are. And in closing, to read this poem from Joyce Rupt, the clear call of the red, bright sentinel of dawn seeps our dreams from my sleepy mind. I become aware of the intense beauty of life, the gift of another day. And while the cardinal continues to call, my soul weeps with the wonder of it all. So if we want to fly, as Buddha says, we have to give up the weight that keeps us on the ground. So thank you so very much for listening to this talk. And I really hope that when you go outside today, when you see a bird, you will look at it differently and realize what an incredible creation this is. Thank you. So in closing today, I would like to invite us to practice our fifth principle, which is not just knowing these things, but living from that place. And so some of the things that I think we can do to make things better for the birds is to, for some of us, like my husband and I, put out water and seeds for them, but also maybe give to the Audubon Society, and to be mindful of what we consume. Not only for our friends the trees, but our friends the birds also live in the trees. And a lot of habitat has been destroyed because of what we have been consuming. To be mindful of how much plastic we consume. And if we do buy 6 packs of things to cut all of the rings so that birds don't get caught up in them, if we have plastic straws, even though it's a pain to cut them up in little tiny pieces, to just be mindful of our impact on the earth and the other creatures, the other nations that we share this planet with, and to just be mindful and to be grateful and to be appreciative of the beauty in all of creation. And to every time we see a bird, to just be grateful for its song and its presence. And so it is. Amen.